Okay, good morning. Not sure my microphone's on. Try
Both ways on the switch.
Is that switch over there?
I know I can talk loud, but the streaming won't work if we don't get the microphones on, so we'll take a minute and see what.
The light's on.
Light's
I don't know
on.
if they're
Can you
actually
hear us?
working.
Does it sound
I
like?
don't think it's coming through.
Okay.
Yeah, they were looking at the system yesterday.
We don't have a good electrical engineer.
How well will we be able to stream it all if and the audio recording won't work?
I think it's just there's not a volume.
Well, no, there is a volume control down there, isn't there?
It's not.
Yeah, it won't work for everybody in the room. Picked it. Yeah. Right, a bit on some for the hearing loop.
Is there like a breaker?
The lights are on your sound system down there.
They come on. The light goes on, but it doesn't seem to pick up our.
Yeah, but is the volume not is up?
But it won't pick up if if we talk really loud or.
Well, I apologize for the delay on this. Maybe the best thing to do is we have a court reporter, so we will have a record of the proceeding, but we won't be able to stream if the microphones aren't working. Before we start, let me just ask: does anybody in the room know of anybody who's relying on the streaming today? But if they are, they probably aren't in the room. So, but other than taking a delay that probably is a longer delay than anybody in the room would want, I think moving forward without streaming is the it's picking up some. Okay, well, we'll just go forward that way. So, good morning. We're here in Public Service Commission Docket 16-03536 in the matter of the application of Rocky Mountain Power to implement programs authorized by the Sustainable Transportation and Energy Plan Act. This is the hearing on Phase 2. We'll take appearances, starting with utility.
Thank you, Chairman Navarro, Commissioner White, Daniel Solander, representing Rocky Mountain Power. I have with me accounts payable Stephen Tugel, Director of Revenue Requirements, and the company intends to call Douglas Marks, Ian Andrews, and Bob Stewart as exhibits.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Justin Jetter with the Utah Attorney General's Office. I'm here today representing the Utah Division of Public Utilities. With me at council table is Division Witness Robert A. Davis, and the division also intends to call witness Myung-Hee Sim Tuttle.
Okay, thank you.
Robert Moore of the AG's office, representing the Office of Consumer Services. I have with me here two utility analysis from the office, Galvin Mangelson and Danny Garcia Martinez.
Thank you.
Good morning. Sophie Hayes with Utah Clean Energy, and with me at council table is Ms. Kate Bowman, and she is our only witness today.
Okay, thank you. Any other preliminary matters? We'll go to Mr. Solander then.
Thank you. Rocky Mountain Power appreciates being able to present today on Phase 2 of our application to move programs authorized by consent legislation. Our first witness that will be calling is Douglas Marks, and he will be testifying in support of the advanced substation metering program.
Mr. Marks, do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi. Could you please state your name and your current position in Rocky Mountain Power Director?
I'm Douglas Marks. I'm the Director of Standards and Technical Services in the Engineering Department.
And did you prepare and publicly filed in this proceeding direct testimony supporting the advanced substation metering program?
Yes, I did.
And do you have any additions or corrections to that testimony that you'd like to make this time?
No, I do not.
Have you prepared a summary of that testimony that you'd like to share with the commission this morning?
Yes. Okay. As the energy sector moves towards distributed renewable generation, more advanced data will be needed about the distribution systems to enable us to more readily connect these generation sources. This project will provide the necessary information for distribution circuits without sufficient metering to provide for the development of a progressive electric grid and for the integration of distributed generation resources in those areas. The advanced substation metering project, if authorized, will enable the company to purchase and install advanced meters on approximately 50 circuits connected to distribution substations that do not have these capabilities. These installations will provide greater visibility into the distribution system and the integration of distributed generation resources in those areas. The company is proposing a budget of $1.1 million for this project. The substation monitoring and measurement of various electrical quantities will provide the information necessary for the development of a more progressive grid, in particular for faster integration of distributed generation resources. Data collection and analysis at the distribution level will be of paramount importance as the company continues to integrate the rapid growth of distributed energy resources into its systems. In addition to providing a greater understanding of solutions that will allow the company to make the grid more progressive, the project will enable increased levels of distributed energy resources on the power grid by providing more visibility into loading levels, load shape, and the event information needed to develop the interconnection studies and determine hosting capacities for distribution circuits. This information will benefit distributed generation applicants and assist the company in determining safe switching procedures, cost-effective capital improvement plans, and help identify and control risks associated with the integration of higher penetration levels of distributed energy resources. The management of distributed resources is a critical issue that the company needs to gain as much information in order to protect the system and our customers. That concludes my summary.
Thank you. I move that Mr. Marcus' testimony and affidavits as filed be entered into the record.
If anyone objects to that motion, please indicate, Jimmy. I'm not seeing any, so the motion's granted.
Thank you. And Mr. Marcus is available for cross-examination and questions from the commission.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jetter.
No questions from the division.
Mr. Moore?
No cross.
Ms. Hayes?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
Just a couple of questions. Thank you, Mr. Marks. Clearly, this, at least it's hoped that this program will generate some important information. And I know there's interest in that information, and it's been expressed by participants in the docket. Is there agreement and consensus around how the information will be shared and to whom it will be, who it will be shared with?
That's a great question. I don't know if there's any agreements outside of the company. I mean, it'll be just the standard data that we gather for other circuits. I mean, we have this capability on a lot of our substations, but most of our rural substations don't have this, and that's where we're seeing the issues with large-scale solar installations coming in that impact our system. So as far as agreements for sharing data, I'm not aware of any outside.
Is this the kind of information that's typically available to customers or other industry participants if they seek it from the company?
Yeah, if they put in the proper request, it is available.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Commissioner White, do you have anything?
I don't know why I'm blowing this down.
Habit, it's habit.
The one question, I guess, and this will probably be a recurring theme on some of the issues presented, where there was a question about reporting, I think, that was addressed initially by the office, and I guess there was, some response to that, but is there any further clarification that the company needs or that the party needs in terms of what type of reporting is appropriate for, and again, this is something we'll probably be addressing on some of the other things, but for specifically the advanced substation metering program?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any additional reporting that's required on this over what's already been discussed.
Okay. So just to be clear then, it's the reporting, the company is clear on what type of reporting, and there's not really an issue with what has been requested by the office or the division in their testimony?
Correct.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
I don't have anything else.
I might redirect on this point.
Sure.
When the company provides this information, it provides it as an aggregated set of data, and it doesn't provide individual customer information relating to loading on the circuit or kind of identifiable information related to specific customers. Is that right?
That's correct. The data that this metering will obtain is for the circuit, not for any individual customer on that circuit. So you're right.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Marks.
Okay.
Let me just take a moment and ask our court reporter, is this working? Are you able to get what we're saying without the amplification? There's a difference than how it normally is, but, okay, just encourage everyone to speak loudly and clearly. Okay.
Thank you. Rocky Mountain Power would like to call Mr. Ian Andrews in support of the STEP Clean Coal Research Project.
Mr. Andrews, do you swear to tell the truth? Thank you.
Morning.
Please state your name and your current position in the Rocky Mountain Power for the record.
My name's Ian Andrews. I'm the Director of Resource Development.
And would you prepare and possibly file in this docket direct testimony in support of clean coal research projects that before the commission here in step 2?
I did.
And do you have any additions or corrections to that testimony that you'd like to make?
I don't.
I move now that Mr. Andrews' testimony and exhibits in support be entered into the record.
Okay, if anyone objects to that motion, please indicate to me. I'm not seeing any, so the motion is granted.
And have you prepared a summary of your testimony that you want to share?
I do have a summary, yes. As part of the overall STEP legislation, the company is requesting approval to apply $5 million in STEP funding over a 5-year period to investigate, analyze, and research clean coal technology. Clean coal technology is defined as a technology that may be researched, developed, or used for reducing emissions or the rate of emissions from a thermal electric generation plant that uses coal as a fuel source. To meet that objective, the company proposes to allocate these funds across a number of projects that focus on the capture, reduction, and sequestration of carbon dioxide and the reduction of nitrogen oxides. Previously, the company presented 2 projects. These for the for the implementation of a neural net system at the Huntington plant and the potential demonstration of a NOx control technologies at either Hunter or Huntington plants. These projects were approved by this commission, and that work is currently in progress. The 5 clean coal research projects that are proposed for the remaining funds are, and I'll describe each of these shortly. The first is a co-firing of processed woody waste consisting of 2 18-hour tests at the Hunter 3 boiler using woody waste processed by 2 Utah firms, Ameren Energy and AEG Coal Switch. The target heat input is 10%, and the primary objective of this test is to determine if these processed fuels behave as drop-in replacements for coal. The proposed funding level is $790,000. The second project is to co-fund a long-term availability test of Sustainable Energy Solutions CO2 cryogenic carbon capture technology at the Hunter plant. The proposed project will consist of modifying the test skid and performing a series of long-term operational tests. Demonstrating the reliability of this technology is the critical next step in order to secure funding to scale up this promising technology to a 5 to 10 megawatt thermal electric equivalent. The proposed funding level is $1.1 million. The third project is to co-fund the University of Utah's feasibility assessment of commercial-scale CO2 geologic sequestration facility adjacent to the Hunter and Huntington plants. The ability to locate to identify locations that are suitable for commercial-scale CO2 geologic sequestration is a critical issue that must be addressed to reduce the carbon footprint of coal-fired generating stations. This project is called Carbon Safe by the U.S. Department of Energy. This Phase 1 effort is the first of the 4 phases of USDO funding opportunities. The University of Utah has been awarded $1.2 million by the US DOE towards this first phase. The proposed amount of STEP funding is $150,000. The 4th project is a feasibility study to evaluate the use of CO2 for beneficial use for enhanced natural gas recovery from coal seams, specifically coal seams in the Emery County area. CO2 has the potential to be used for enhancing natural gas recovery from coal beds in much the same way carbon dioxide is currently used for enhanced oil recovery. As part of this study, an assessment will be made of the capability of these coal seams to concurrently sequester CO2. The proposed funding level is $275,000. And lastly, the 5th project is the evaluation of the potential for integrating solar thermal heat recovery system to provide steam or feed water heating to the Hunter 3 boiler. The study would be specific to the Hunter plant, taking into account site-specific insulation, performance, and land availability. The proposed funding level is $187,000. These 5 projects were presented at technical conferences held on November 7th, 2016, and January 24th, 2017. This concludes my testimony summary.
Thank you. Mr. Ian Andrews is available for questions from Commissioner Costello.
Thank you. Mr. Jetter?
I have no questions.
Mr. Moore?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Hayes? Thank you. Commissioner White?
I'll just ask, and you can defer, this may be a question for Mr. McDougall, because it was either addressed or not addressed in his rebuttal testimony. The question is there was with respect to the cryogenic carbon capture, there was a question of whether, there would be kind of a pause, I guess, in the funding between Phase 1 and Phase 2, and there was some discussion in Mr. McDougall's rebuttal testimony about essentially the need for, because of the funding partners, the DOE, et cetera, that would be problematic. I noticed in the carbon capture and sequestration program, there's also phases to that program. Is there that same concern about breaking those up? In other words, taking a pause and evaluating before the funding continues because of the same funding partners? Or
We've not made any obligations or commitments to SES for any Phase 2 funding for their proposed program.
So that's for the
Cryogenic capture.
Okay, so it's that same concern. Okay, yeah. So like that.
Commissioner Clark?
Just to follow up on that line of questioning, so is there a potential problem or impediment if the project is only initially funded through Phase 1 and then further funding evaluated at that point after the Phase 1 results are available? Or if that creates problems for other participants, what are those problems?
Well, the intent of Phase 1 is to demonstrate long-term availability of the test. They have done that. We have used this test skid at a couple of other facilities, but the tests have been very short-term. They have to demonstrate long-term availability in order to secure DOE funding. So this is kind of a critical next step, is to demonstrate this long-term availability. So the results of this Phase 1 effort will have an impact on Phase 2, but the expectation is that this will operate over a long period of time.
And then what would happen with the Phase 2 funding if the expectation is not met? And
I don't know to what extent the DOE has any commitments at this time for long-term funding for that Phase 2 effort.
Sure.
If I could represent you, you can address this when you call.
Thank you. And that concludes my questions. Thank
Okay. I don't have any questions for Mr. Andrews. Thank you.
Okay.
third witness will be Mr. F. Robert Stewart in support of the commercial line program.
Mr. Stewart, do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Please state your name and your current position in Rocky Mountain Power for the record.
My name is F. Robert Stewart. My present position is Senior Regulatory Specialist, Customer and Regulatory Liaison Department in the regulation.
Part of your duties is that, in that position, did you prepare and cause to be filed in this docket testimony?
Yes.
And do you have any corrections or additions to that testimony that you'd like to make?
No.
Maybe also prepare a summary that you'd like to share with the commission.
Yes, I have. My testimony explains and provides support for the proposed commercial line extension pilot program. The company is requesting authorization from the Commission to spend $2.5 million of STEP funds over 5 years for the line extension pilot pursuant to the legislation. This pilot includes a new tariff, Regulation Number 13. The proposed Regulation 13 provides an allowance of 20% of the cost of backbone electrical infrastructure within non-residential or commercial developments that the developer would otherwise pay. A development is an area where groups of buildings may be constructed at or about the same time. Backbone is the primary voltage line which distributes power to and throughout the development to which future buildings are connected. The current tariff, Line Extension Tariff Regulation 12, provides an allowance to commercial buildings, but not to commercial developments. It is up to the commercial development developer to request and pay for the installation of the backbone at their own expense. It is a growing trend for these developers to not request installation of backbone. The result is the backbone is installed in a piecemeal fashion as individual commercial buildings are constructed. Piecemeal installations are more expensive and problematic due to multiple mobilizations, lack of an overall design, lack of loop feed reliability until the development is filled in, greater difficulty of installation after surface improvements have been completed, and lack of coordination with those utilities that the municipality requires to be installed up front. This lack of coordination results in space conflicts, insufficient clearances and dedicated easements, increased difficulty of construction, and risk of damage in excavating around existing facilities. For these reasons, the company is proposing this innovative utility program in the interest of our utility customers.
Does that conclude your summary?
Yes.
I'd ask at this time that Mr. Stewart's testimony and exhibits be entered into the record.
Please indicate to me if anybody objects to that motion. Not seeing any, so the motion is granted. Thank you.
Mr. Stewart is available for cross-examination and questions from the commission.
Thank you. Mr. Jenner?
I have no questions.
Mr. Moore?
The office has no questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hayes? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Clark?
No questions?
Commissioner White?
I have no questions, thank you.
And I don't either. Thank you.
Thank you.
For its final witness, Rocky Mountain Power would like to call Mr. Steve McDougal.
Mr. McDougall, do you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Could you please state your name and current position in Rocky Mountain Power?
Yes, my name is Stephen R. McDougall. I am the Director of Revenue Requirements.
And as Director of Revenue Requirement, did you prepare and cause to be filed rebuttal testimony that's before the commission in phase 2 of this matter?
Yes,
And do you have any corrections or additions to that testimony that you'd like to make at this time?
no,
And you prepare a summary?
yes. Are you going to move for admission for?
Yeah.
Okay. My rebuttal testimony in Phase 2 of this docket addresses the following issues. First, the STEP funding limits. The company will commit to not charge more to the STEP project than authorized in the legislation. Any ongoing O&M occurring after the conclusion of the STEP surcharge will be included in future rate cases, and the company will justify the ongoing level similar to all other O&M expenses. 2, the Clean Coal Project. The company is seeking funds for Phase 1 of the project. To clarify a point and to try and answer some of the questions that I know are going to come up, it may not have been clear in my rebuttal testimony, but we are only seeking recovery of Phase 1 costs at this time. We are not seeking funding for Phase 2. If the company proceeds with Phase 2 prior to getting approval, the company would need to support the prudence of its decision in a future proceeding, similar to any other investment the company makes. 3, on the commercial line extension program, the company will provide annual reports detailing how the incentives are being used each year of the pilot program, and the company will work informally with the regulatory agencies and on other information needs regarding the line extension program. The company also agreed to modify the regulation number 13 language as stated in my rebuttal testimony. And lastly, on confidential information, the company believes that sharing information from STEP programs will allow parties to work together on future projects that support grid modernization and future innovative technology programs. However, the company does not want to have any type of annual reporting that distributes confidential customer information. As supported in the company's application in this docket and the testimony of the company witnesses, the company recommends that the commission find that the Phase 2 programs are prudent and consistent with the STEP legislation, and the company respectfully requests that the commission approve all issues under consideration in Phase 2 of this docket. Thank you. That concludes my testimony.
If any party objects to that motion, please indicate, Jimmy. Not seeing any, so the motion is granted. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jeter.
I have no questions.
Mr. Moore.
The office has no questions, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Hayes? Commissioner White?
That was helpful. I appreciate it. So I just so to make sure I heard you correctly, and that clarification regarding the additional phase would be addressed in some other filing or docket or proceeding beyond this, and there's no request for approval of that at this juncture.
Correct. We are not requesting funding. We would either have to request funding in a separate docket or just go through prudence like we would any other capital expenditure in a future proceeding.
Is there any, I mean, again, not to get back to this, but the issue of the DOE or the funding partners, there's nothing that you need at this juncture to give signals or otherwise. It's just that'll be a completely separate.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
Mr. Ragul, thank you for your clarification about reporting relative to the commercial line extension program. That addressed the questions I had for you on that program, so I don't have any further. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I don't have any further questions, so thank you, Mr. McDougall.
Thank you.
That concludes Representative Powers.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jeter?
The division would like to call and have sworn in as first witness, Mr. Robert Davis.
Mr. Davis, do you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Davis.
Morning.
Would you
Robert A. Davis, I'm a utility analyst for the Division of Public Utilities.
Thank you. And in the course of this docket, there's a number of phases going on, so I'm going to be a little more specific than I typically would in identifying your testimony. But is it correct that you submitted both direct and rebuttal testimony, direct, the Phase 2 direct dated March 7th, 2017, and the rebuttal in Phase 2 dated April 11th, 2017?
That's correct.
Do you have any corrections to add?
I do. Just one on my direct testimony on line 267. I had written in there that it was approval of 1.145 million. That should have been 1.175 million.
Okay.
And would that change if you were asked the questions in both of those pre-filed testimonies today? Would your answer be the same?
Yes.
And have you prepared a brief statement to the record of the
I have.
Please go ahead.
The division has reviewed the company's application for implementation of the remaining STEP programs as outlined in the Commission's Phase 2 scheduling order in this docket. The parties stipulated to add a Phase 3 to the proceeding for the electric vehicle program, which is scheduled to be heard later in May of this year. The division finds the company's application and remaining STEP programs, excluding the electrical vehicle program, to be in the public interest. The division believes the company should follow the same accounting treatment and reporting guidelines for the programs in this phase as those in Phase 1 of this docket. Additionally, the division recommends the company be held accountable to report its progress and actual expenditures on the Phase 2 programs. The division will audit and track the STEP initiatives proposed in this phase concurrently with those in Phase 1. The division understands, as ordered by the Commission in Phase 1 of this proceeding, that program-related operational, maintenance, administrative, and general, or OMAG, expenses will be included within the STEP budgets throughout the 5-year pilot. However, the division understands that some OMAG expenses are difficult to estimate over the 5-year pilot. For these OMAG expenses and those expenses that may occur after the STEP pilot for programs deemed to continue in the public interest, the company will need to seek recovery in a future rate case. The company is committed to the reporting and tracking of the OMAG expenses. The division recommends this approval be conditional upon the accounting treatment, reporting requirements, and treatment of OMAG expenses as previously stated. Specifically, the division recommends approval of the Advanced Substation Metering Program and approval of the remaining clean coal technology programs, CO2 woody waste, cryogenic carbon capture and sequestration, coal bed methane recovery, and solar thermal recovery technology. The division's second witness in this phase of the proceeding, Ms. Myung-hee Tuttle, will testify on the commercial line extension program. Thank you. That concludes my summary.
Thank you. And I want to ask you just a follow-up clarifying question. You mentioned the electric vehicle program. Is it fair to say that your opinion on that today is just neutral, that we're not presenting the community either way, just that you're not recommending approval?
That's correct.
Okay, if any party objects to that motion, please indicate to me. Not seeing any, so the motion's granted. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further questions, and Mr. Davis is available for prompts or questions from me.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Moore?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Hayes? Mr. Solander?
No question.
Okay, Commissioner White?
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Clark?
No questions.
Trey, just as a clarification, I think you've probably already made this clear. Is your recommendation that the commission should, in its order, you're recommending that we should approve the programs? Are you recommending that our order should outline reporting requirements specifically, or is your testimony that there's a general understanding of the type of reporting requirements that should be in place?
I think there's a general understanding. The parties haven't really discussed the format or anything like that, but I think it's already clear.
Okay. Consistent with what's in your testimony regarding what the division would like to see reported?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Sorry,
Mr. White?
I didn't have one, but, and I guess just following up on what Chair LeVar was asking, there's been discussion of, potential workshops. Is that something also that the division plans to collaborate with the stakeholders to, figure out the correct format and how those will look like, or is there any agreement on those?
I don't know if hasn't really been discussed in detail. That's the assumption moving forward, just don't have the detail on how that's to move forward.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis.
We would like to call a second witness, Young Ho.
Ms. Tuttle, do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Ho.
Good morning.
Would you please state your name, and I'd like you to spell it for the court reporter also this morning.
Yes. My name is Myung-hee Sim Tuttle, MYUNGHEE-SIMTUTTLE.
Thank you. And what is your occupation?
I'm a utility analyst for the Division of Public Utilities.
Course of employment, create and file with the commission a pre-filed direct testimony dated March 7th, 2017.
Yes.
Do you have any corrections or edits you'd like to make?
No, I do not.
Thank you. If you were asked the same questions that were in that pre-filed testimony today, would your answer be the same?
Yes.
And have you prepared a brief summary of your testimony?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
The division has evaluated the company's proposed commercial line extension pilot program as outlined in the Commission's Phase 2 scheduling order in the STEP docket. The division finds the commercial line extension pilot program to be in the public interest and recommends that the Commission approve the commercial line extension pilot program. In addition to the recommendation of approving the commercial line extension pilot program, the division requests that the Commission require the company to include an analysis quantifying the benefits of the line extension program in its overall STEP report. Second, the division recommends that the Commission order the company to provide annual reports showing how the incentives from Regulation 13 are being used in each of the respective 5 years of the pilot. The division will audit and review the commercial line extension pilot program with the reports provided by the company. This concludes my summary.
Thank you. I'd like to move at this time to enter Ms. Tuttle's direct testimony.
Thank you. If any party objects to that motion, please indicate to me. Okay, the motion's granted.
Thank you. I have no further questions, and this is available for questions from the presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
No questions, thank you.
No questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes? Thank you, Mr. Solander. Commissioner Clark?
Good morning, Ms. Tuttle.
Good morning.
Are you satisfied, having reviewed the responsive testimony of the company, that the information that the division will require to properly evaluate the performance of the program will be available, at least as they've represented that they will make it available to you?
Yes, the division, we feel that with those information that we'll be able to review the program and see if the program will be effective. And
Thank you. That concludes my question.
Commissioner White?
I have no questions.
Ms. Tuttle, I just have one question, or maybe two. For the office, Mr. Martinez suggested some changes to the tariff language, and then Mr. McDougall suggested some modifications to Mr. Martinez's recommendation. Do you have an opinion on the tariff language as recommended by both Mr. Martinez and Mr. McDougall?
I do not have an opinion on that.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
And that concludes the division witnesses.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Moore?
Thank you. The office calls Gavin Mangelson as our first witness and asks him to be sworn.
Mr. Mangelson, do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
What is your name, business address, and occupation?
My name is Gavin Mangelson. I am a utility analyst for the Office of Consumer Services. My business address is 160 East, 300 South, Salt Lake City, Utah.
Did you submit direct testimony on March 7th, 2007 in this docket?
Yes, I submitted 8 pages of direct testimony.
Do you have any corrections to that testimony or additions?
Yes, on lines 36 and 148, when referencing the legislation, it should read an electric grid-related project rather than an electric grid-related program.
Other than that correction, if I asked you the same questions today as we're asking your pre-filed testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Have you prepared a summary of the officer's position?
Yes, I have.
Please provide that.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. In my direct testimony, I identified the benefits of the proposed substation meters and clarified that the substation meters only provide information. Advanced substation metering equipment can provide data necessary to identify potential sources of system harm, but cannot affect power flows or otherwise resolve or mitigate any identified system constraints. My testimony also noted that no evidence has yet been collected indicating that system constraints are being caused by distributed energy resources. The office recommended that certain reporting requirements be included as part of the approval of this program, including program evaluations, any installations that deviate from the application, and that the information collected be made available to interested parties, along with any conclusions that can be made or inferred from the data. The company indicated that it supports the sharing of information from STEP programs, not including confidential customer information. The company previously agreed to program evaluations in an annual STEP report. With the company's previous agreement and appropriate sharing of information, the office supports the proposal and agrees that advanced substation meters qualify under the STEP legislation.
Does this complete your statement?
Yes.
At this time, the officer would move for admission of his testimony.
If any party objects to that motion, please indicate to me. And the motion's granted. Thank you.
The witness is available for cross and questions from the commission.
Okay. Mr. Jetter, I'll go to you first.
I have no question.
Ms. Hayes? Thank you. Mr. Solander? Commissioner White?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
No questions.
And I don't have any. Thank you.
As their second witness, the office would call Danny Martinez and ask him to be sworn.
Ms. Martinez, do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Could you please state your name, business address, and occupation?
Yes, my name is Danny Martinez. I'm a utility analyst for the Office of Consumer Services. My business address is 160 East, 300 South in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Have you submitted direct rebuttal testimony together with exhibits in this docket?
Yes.
Do you have any corrections or additions to this testimony?
No.
Have you prepared a summary of this testimony?
Yes.
Could you please provide that summary?
Yes. Good morning. My testimony addresses the Phase 2 STEP programs, which includes the company's commercial line extension proposal and clean coal programs. I filed direct and rebuttal testimony during Phase 2 of this docket. In my direct testimony, I addressed issues associated with the company's commercial line extension proposal. First, I recommended to the Commission that the company measure and report the benefits derived by the company's commercial line extension program. The company responded in rebuttal testimony that it would work with parties to develop methods of measuring and reporting any program benefits. Excuse me. The office supports the company's willingness to work with parties to develop methods of identifying and reporting any benefits of the program. Second, the office recommended to the Commission tariff language to clarify eligibility requirements with the company's proposed Regulation 13. The company addressed the office's concerns in rebuttal testimony by modifying the office's proposed language. The office supports the company's modified eligibility tariff language in Regulation 13. In my direct testimony, the tariff language I proposed was an attempt to be consistent with the company's response to OCS Data Request 9.1 concerning language originally stating that developers, quote, may need to comply with electric vehicle charging requirements. The company's rebuttal testimony is an updated company position that now indicates that all eligible developers will be required to meet the electric vehicle charging station requirements. Given this new information, the office supports the revised tariff language proposal put forth by the company. Lastly, regarding my testimony concerning the company's clean coal project, the office supports the division's testimony that the company should track and report OMAG expenses for Phase 2 clean coal projects in the same manner as proposed in Phase 1. In conclusion, with the company's assurances provided in rebuttal testimony and the additional Regulation 13 tariff language as the company proposed, the office supports the company's modified commercial line extension program. The office also supports the company's Phase 2 clean coal projects, subject to the requirement that the company track and report OMAG expenses in the same manner as proposed in Phase 1. That is the conclusion.
At this point, the office would move for admission of his testimony and attached exhibits.
Is there any objection to that motion from any party? The motion's granted. Thank you.
The witness is available for cross and questions from the commission.
Mr. Jetter.
I have no questions.
Ms. Hayes?
No, thank you.
Mr. Solander?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner White?
No questions, thanks.
And I don't either. Thank you.
This completes the office's testimony.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes?
Thank you. Utah Clean Energy calls Kate Bowman as its witness. She will need to be sworn.
Ms. Bowman, do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Bowman. Can you please state your name for the record?
Kate Bowman. I'm the Solar Project Coordinator for Utah Clean Energy.
Did you file direct testimony in Phase 2 of this docket on March 7th of 2017?
Yes, I did.
If I ask you the same questions today as are set forth in that testimony, would your answer be the same?
Yes.
Have you prepared a summary of your testimony?
Yes, I have.
Will you please present that?
Yes. The purpose of Utah Clean Energy's testimony is to express support for the company's proposed substation metering project and to provide recommendations to maximize the value proposition for ratepayers who would be funding this program through the STEP program. Distributed energy resources will play a critical role in the grid of the future and will provide valuable grid services while improving reliability and resiliency. Customers are becoming active participants in today's electric grid, and the market for new distributed energy technologies is growing, including rooftop solar, smart inverters, energy storage, controllable loads, electric vehicles, and energy efficiency resources. The benefits of distributed energy technologies can be amplified when these technologies are deployed in concert with one another, and increased data visibility into the distribution system can be used to understand how to integrate these technologies cost-effectively and to inform distribution system planning in order to keep costs low for all ratepayers. First, the company notes that the proposed program will provide location-specific data that allows the company to perform interconnection studies more cost-effectively. Increased data visibility into real locations on the Utah distribution system can also allow the utility to evaluate the technical basis for existing interconnection rules and ensure that the interconnection rules remain in line with best practices. Second, increased data visibility can be used to inform distribution system planning and identify strategies to keep costs low for all ratepayers in the long term. Distributed solar combined with battery storage and demand response can reduce system peak demand and offer distribution grid benefits, including frequency regulation and voltage support. These benefits vary based on the technology or technologies deployed and their location, and improved data visibility into the distribution system can reveal local grid conditions at specific times within specific context. To date, little data related to the interaction between distributed energy resources and the distribution system has been made available to stakeholders. And without improved data visibility, the company may miss opportunities to accurately account for distributed energy resources in long-term utility planning processes and leverage the benefits of private investments in distributed energy resources to keep costs low for all ratepayers. Utah Clean Energy supports the stated intentions of this proposed program, namely to modernize the grid, enable increasing levels of distributed energy resources, improve customer service, and maintain grid integrity. Utah Clean Energy supports the company making the proposed investments in advanced substation metering infrastructure to the extent that the information the company collects is used to inform the cost-effective integration of distributed energy resources and to facilitate lower-cost solutions to customer needs system-wide. We further note that the challenges identified by the company are not solely caused by increasing distributed energy resource penetration. For example, changes in loads and the age and condition of distribution grid infrastructure will also impact grid conditions and necessary utility investments. And the benefits of increased data visibility go beyond improved integration of distributed energy resources and can be used to resolve a variety of technical issues that impact customer service and satisfaction and inform distribution system planning. Given that the proposed program will be funded using ratepayer money in order to maximize the value of the investment for ratepayers, we request that stakeholders be able to access data gained from this program, that the company provide regular updates to inform stakeholders as key milestones are reached, and that the company prepare a report outlining key findings when the program has been implemented. And on this point, in response to some of the questions regarding reporting requirements, we agree with the recommendations made by the Division of Public Utilities and the 3 specific reporting recommendations that have been made by the Office of Consumer Services. And that concludes my summary.
Thank you. Utah Clean Energy now moves the admission of the direct testimony, phase 2 direct testimony of Kate Bowman.
If any party objects to that motion, please indicate to me. Or did you complete your motion? Did I? Sorry.
Sorry, I spoke over you. I think so. We just moved the admission of her direct testimony, phase 2 direct testimony into the record.
Okay. Yeah, if any party objects, please indicate to me. And the motion's granted. Thank you.
Ms. Bowman is now available for questions.
Thank you. I'll go to Mr. Moore first.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Jeter?
I have no questions.
Mr. Solander?
No questions.
Commissioner White?
I think I heard that you're comfortable with the way that Mr. Solander represented how the data would be provided in the aggregate rather than customer-specific data, and that's would be useful to stakeholders. Is that so? It sounds like there's a consensus, I guess, in terms of the path forward to how to provide data from this program.
Yes, and we understand that sensitive customer information should be protected, and that there are ways to share data with interested parties while still protecting customer information.
That's all the questions I have.
Commissioner Clark?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and I don't have any either. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hayes, anything else from Utah Clean Energy?
No, that concludes all of our.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else from any party? Okay, thank you for being here today. Thank you especially for accommodating our audio difficulties, especially to our court reporter. Appreciate your accommodating that today. And we're adjourned.